Hi, everyone, and thanks, George, for this opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be here to present our work for you. So today I'll talk about investment in V2G, which is vehicle to grid, and DER, that means distributed energy resources. We will look at this problem from two perspectives. First, the distributors, and second, the prosumers. And we will see the effect of different applicable rate on the profitability of these investment scenarios. This is a joint work with my supervisor, Pierre-Olivier Pinot, and we collaborated with two companies in this project. First, Green Mountain Power, a utility company in Vermont in the United States, and a startup in Montreal, Osiaco, which is recently rebranded to Decibel. So today I will introduce the problem to you, and we will have a quick look on the literature review. Then we will see the mathematical models for both agents. I will present the results and insights, and I will conclude by summarizing our findings. In this figure, you can, the red line is the consumption for a sample house in Vermont. You can see that the consumption is not uniformly distributed. There are some peak points and there are some valleys. In order to meet the peak load demand, the distributor, the generator, has to expand the capacity of the network. And usually to meet this high load, the generators tend to use dispatchable sources like fossil fuels that not only come with high price, but also increase the carbon footprint in the network. Also, in order to meet this load, a high ramp up and ramp down cost imposed to the network, and underutilization and inefficiency in the network endanger the reliability of the system. So in order to overcome this problem, one interesting way is to use clean energy sources like the solar panel generation, which is the blue line in this figure. But there is an obvious problem. When there is solar panel generation, the load is low. And when there is a high load, we don't have solar panel generation anymore. We have solar panel when it is during the day and high load during the night. So solution to this problem is to use batteries. You can store the electricity when it is available from the solar panel, or buy it from the network and save it, store it into the battery, and then use it when the electricity price is high or the consumption is high, or even you can sell back electricity to the grid and gain profit. But stationary batteries also come with a problem, which is high investment cost. Many in academia and industry propose a solution which is connecting your electric vehicle to the grid. In electric vehicle, you have a battery, and there is an estimate in California that 90% of the cars are available during the peak hours. They are parked next to the house. So you can use their battery during the peak loads and use their battery. And also the residential sector accounts for 40% of the consumption in the United States. So if you address this problem in the residential sector, you solve a big problem in the whole network. So this is why people connect their electric vehicles to the grid. As I mentioned before, we collaborated with Decibel company. They produce a product which name is Decibel. They take control of the electricity flow in the house. They connect to every electric device. They take control of the charging and discharging stationary battery and EV, and they control the electricity flow from the solar panel. And they make sure the consumption is met in the house. This concept, connecting vehicle to the grid, comes with many challenges. And in this section, I will go through the most important studies that address these challenges. One of the challenges is that the integration problem, and Bibak et al. Investigated the environmental, societal, and economical effects of connecting vehicles to the grid. Also, another challenge is who should invest in these equipments. As I mentioned before, these equipments are usually costly, and probably the many consumers do not have enough incentive or are not able to afford the purchase and installation cost of these equipments. So, and also there are many actors in the electricity network who might benefit from having these devices and technologies in the network. So a very important question is that who should invest in this equipment? Noel et al. Considered aggregators as an important player in this field, and considered what is the profitability of investing in these devices for the aggregators. Another work which is done with my supervisor and one of his students is investigating the profitability of V2H. V2H is a similar concept when you connect your electric vehicle to just your house. You are not able to sell back electricity to the grid and just use the stored electricity in your vehicle just to satisfy the demand in your house. Another big problem is that, or challenge is that how to design a good rate such that connecting vehicle to the grid would be profitable. David Richardson considered some premium tariffs that makes V2G more profitable, and to incentivize the consumers to adopt this technology. Also, some case studies on the profitability of V2G are carried out in different areas like Netherlands, China, and India. In this, for our problem, we collaborated with Decibel. They usually offer these technologies to their consumers in California, and they provided us with 5 most favorable investment scenarios. The first scenario is that you just purchase a stationary battery and put it in your house. Second one is combination of a solar panel and the battery. The third one is just connecting your EV to the house. The first one is combining your EV with a solar panel, and the fifth one is combination of everything. You have a stationary battery, you have electric vehicle, and you connect your electric vehicle to the house and grid, and you have solar panel. Also, we have a status quo scenario that you invest in. In this table, you can see the capacity of every device, and every investment scenario comes with a total cost, which is reported in USD. What we are looking after in this paper, we are going to address 3 main questions. The first one is that who should invest in this scenarios. We consider 2 important agents. The first one is distributor, who provides the electricity for the consumers, and second one is the prosumer. The term prosumer comes from the combination of 2 words, consumer, who is traditionally homeowner that consumes energy, and proactive user, who reacts to the signals that you receive from the market. Combination of these means that someone who consumes energy and responds to the signals of the market and his own consumption. The next important question is to invest on what scenario, what combination of technologies should we use if the distributor is going to invest or if the prosumer is going to invest. And the third question is what rate should be available for the agents. and what is the effect of the rates on the profitability of each investment scenario. Finally, the decisions of agent affects the annual cost of the other agent, and also different investment scenarios affect the monthly peak loads and the pressure on the network. So we will see the effect of each investment scenario by each agent on the network and other agents' costs. So I'll go quickly through the mathematical models. Firstly, we assume that all parameters are deterministic and given in the beginning. We use the same charge, discharge limitation, and efficiency rate for both stationary battery, and electric vehicle. Also, we use a single rate for the distributor. If the distributor decides to purchase and invest in the equipment in the consumer's home, he buys the electricity from the market at RTLMP rate, and also can sell back to the market at the same price. But for the prosumer, we have a different story. He faces different rates. The first rate is the flex rate. He pays a daily fixed charge, and then he pays the same rate for whatever he consumes. The next one is time of use. In order to incentivize the prosumer to reduce his load during peak hours, the distributor sets a higher price for peak hours and sets a lower price for off-peak hours in order to shift the prosumer's load. The third one is the combination of the first two. The consumer gets the flat rate for general consumption, but he can charge his EV during off-peak hours using a lower rate that you can see here. The first one is the RTLMP rate. We want to investigate if the consumer would be able to compete in a free market. What would be the result if he receives the market price and be able to sell back in the market price. The fifth one is the
Reza, what is RTLMP? So it's real time market price, and L
locational marginal price. It is the market price.
I was looking for the meaning of L. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. And the fifth rate is the combination of RTLMP and time of use. It means that you are buying at a time of use from the distributor, and but you sell back electricity to the grid at the market price. Yeah, it means that you are directly connected to the wholesale market for selling back the electricity. We have two indexes. The first one, we calculate the monthly peak loads, and within a month, we have time episode T, and for every 1 month, we use the index K. And our planning horizon is a year. So here you can see the parameters. We have the minimum and maximum amount of the energy that can be stored in the battery, and the same for the battery of the EV. We have the charging and discharging capacity, which is the same for EV and battery. And we have the charging and discharging loss for both battery and EV. Also, you can see here the cost coefficient for the RNS, which accounts for the distribution costs, and capacity cost coefficient for the capacity. These costs are related to the peak load. In order to meet the peak load, you need to expand your network, and these coefficients take account for that. PT means the rate that you buy electricity, and PSEL means the rate you sell the electricity. L accounts for the load. A means the AT means the availability of EV. During the working days of the week, the EV from 8:45 to 5:15 is not available. The consumer goes to work during these hours, so the EV is not available during those hours. VT is the consumption of the EV. RT means the electricity generation from solar panel, and we introduced the iterate that shows if iterate is equal to 1, it is a binary parameter. If it is equal to 1, means that the consumer is allowed to sell back electricity to the grid or to the market. So here we have the decision variables that are similar. XGL means the electricity flow from grid to load. GB means grid to battery, grid to electric vehicles, and so on. Also, we have a XK peak that we introduced to calculate the monthly peak loads. We have also two state variables. The first one accounts for the stationary battery, and the second one is for the electric vehicles, and they show how much electricity is stored in each device. Okay, first we consider the distributor's model. Distributor invests in the equipment and takes control of the equipment. His objective function has 3 components. The first term accounts for the buying cost. This is the rate, and this is the amount that he buys. This is the coefficient for selling, and this is the amount that he sells. And yeah.
Reza, please slow down. We are not used to these notations. Take your time in explaining each equation, because we are not necessarily all familiar with this stuff. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for saying that. So the first part is the when you buy electricity and sell it, first you have to, this is the amount that you sell to the consumers, and it is multiplied by the coefficient. Then you sell at this price, and it is multiplied by this coefficient. And finally, the distributor has 2 concerns. First, the revenue, and second, the cost he pay because of the peak loads. Whatever the peak load, it is multiplied by 2 coefficients. First one is the distribution cost, and second one is the capacity cost. The time step in our model is 15 minutes, so we multiply this by 4. So the second part is for the third part is for the capacity cost, network cost, and the first and second part are for the selling. Next, we make sure that the demand is low. The electricity from different sources should be more than the consumption in the house. In the next series of constraints, we make sure that firstly, we charge the EV when EV is present. And second, we get the electricity not more than what is stored in the battery or EV. In the next series of constraints, we make sure that we respect the charging and discharging limits. In a time step, we don't get more electricity than the charging rate or discharge. Next, we respect the boundaries of the electricity stored in the batteries. For example, for the EV, we cannot, the capacity of EV is 60 kilowatt, and you cannot have less than 50 kilowatt hour in the battery, and you cannot have more than 60 kilowatt in the battery of EV. In the next constraint, we make sure that we don't get electricity from solar panel more than what is generated there. These are different destinations of the electricity. The electricity can go from solar panel to load, can go from solar panel to battery, can go from solar panel to EV, or we can sell back electricity to the grid. So the sum of these should be less than the electricity generated in solar panel. In the next series of constraints. We calculate the state variables in the next time step. We calculate that how much was stored, how much is added to the battery, and how much is taken from it. And so it will be equal to the next time step state variable. Finally, we calculate the peak load in every time step, and here you can see that all our variables are continuous, so we have a linear programming model. The next case is for the Prosumer, and we consider when the Prosumer invests and takes control of the equipment. His objective function, his model is identical to the distributor's model. There is just two differences. The first one is that the consumer does not care about the network cost. He does not care about the peak load. He just take care of the cost he's going to pay or revenue he's going to get. And also we added a new constraint that if the trade parameter is 1, he is able to sell back electricity to the grid. And if this is 0, every parameter that shows electricity going from home to the grid, it would be equal to 0. So let's take a look at the results, and first we will see the results, what would happen if the distributor invests and take controls of the equipment. In order to measure the profitability of each investment scenario, we calculate the net present value of each investment scenario. The interest rate is 6.90%, and we consider 15 years as the lifetime of the equipment. As you can see here, the S0 is the status quo and the NPV is 0. The only profitable investment scenario is scenario number 3, which is just connecting your EV to the grid. Other investment scenarios are not profitable. And here you can see that even though investing in any scenario decreases the monthly peak loads, the blue line is the status quo, and the other colors account for other investment scenarios. You can see that under any investment scenario, peak loads are decreased, but only one of them, which is the purple one, is only the purple one is profitable. But the more interesting one is when the Prosumer invests and controls the system. So first, let's see what would happen if selling back to the grid is not allowed. Under this situation, you can see the NPV under different rates. Flat time of use just for EV, and flat for other consumptions, market price, and buying at time of use rate, and selling back to the market at RTLMP price. Under this situation, we have only one profitable scenario, which is under time of use tariff, and investing in scenario number 3, which is just connecting the EV to the grid, and it returns the NPV of $451. We can see that not allowing the consumer to connect to the grid is not a good idea and makes most of the investment scenarios not profitable. But what happens when he is able to sell back electricity to the grid? You can see here that it is an example of scenario number 5, that when the consumer is allowed to sell back electricity to the grid, he charges the light blue color is for the scenario number 5. During the hours that the consumption is low and the price is low, he buys electricity from the grid and stores it into the battery and EV. And during the peak hours, not only is able to satisfy his own demand, but also sells back electricity to the grid and makes money using that. And here is the NPV of the scenarios when he's allowed to sell back electricity to the grid. So let's go into more detail for this graph. Under the market price, we can see that there is no profitable investment scenario. It means that the prosumer is not able to compete with other players in the market. Also, buying at TU and selling at RTLMP also is not a good idea and makes any investment scenario not profitable. But for the most applicable rates that are available for the consumers in Vermont, firstly, we can see that having only stationary battery or combination of stationary battery and solar panel is also never profitable. But other scenarios can be profitable under proper rate. The best one that the prosumer would choose is to choose time of use for EV and flat for other consumption. The consumer gets ordinary rate, but he's able to charge his EV at a low rate. So here, the best scenario for him is to have solar panel and be able to combine it with his electric vehicle. The best scenario is the combination of these two. The next best scenario is to just connecting your EV to the grid, and the next one is having EV, PV, and stationary battery. But choosing each investment scenario also affects the costs of the distributor. You can see here that because the consumer does not care about the you can see here because the consumer does not care about the peak load and network costs. The blue line is the status quo because he does not care about the costs. Here you can see that the monthly peak loads would be higher under time of use rate. But under some other rates, for example, on time of use EV and flat, not only the peak loads are not increased, but under some in some months the peak loads are even decreased. So here there is a question that what is the interaction between the prosumer and the distributor? To answer this question, we established this very simple game between two agents. Firstly, the distributor decides if he is going to allow the prosumer to sell back electricity to the grid or he would not. After the distributor is more powerful agent and he makes the first decision. Then, according to his decision, the prosumer chooses one of the rates, and under that rate, he would choose one of the investment scenarios. In other words, this is the best response table from the prosumer to the distributor's decisions. You can see if the prosumer is allowed to sell back electricity to the grid. Let's assume he chooses the flat rate. The first element shows the investment scenario he chooses. Oops, sorry. He chooses. The next item is the prosumer's revenue in 15 years, the NPV of investment in 15 years. And the next item is the annual cost that he imposes to the network. You can see that under the most revenue, the highest revenue for the prosumer is when he chooses the time of use for EV and flat for other usage. He can get NPV of $10,712, and the cost that he imposes to the network is even lower than the status quo. It means that if he invests in these scenarios, not only he would not increase the monthly peak loads, but also he decreases the network cost for the distributor. On the other side, if he is not allowed to sell back electricity to the grid, in most cases, he would not invest in anything, but under time of use rate, he would invest in just connecting the EV to the grid, and he would get a $451 MPV, but he would increase the network cost by $1,000. So comparing these two best choices of the prosumer, it seems that it is not a good idea to not letting the prosumer to sell back electricity to the grid, because under this equilibrium, both of the agents would benefit from this investment. So let's get back to the main questions I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. And the first question was who should invest? We can see that both agents, the investment in V2G and DER can be beneficial for both agents. If the distributor invests, he can get an MPV of $909. On the other side, if there is a proper rate structure and he is allowed to sell back electricity to the grid, the prosumer also can earn money and get a positive MPV. Also, investment by the prosumer under correct condition can benefit both agents. The next question was what investment scenario to choose, and we can see that the only one profitable investment scenario for the distributor is just to incentivize the consumer to connect his electric vehicle to the grid. But when the prosumer decides to invest, the best scenario is to have solar panel and electrical vehicle together. And the next one is to just connect electric vehicle. And the last one is the combination of a stationary battery, electric vehicle, and solar panel. The next question was what rate to impose. We see that firstly, it is not a good idea to not allow the prosumer to sell back electricity to the grid. And also, after we make the prosumer allow to sell back electricity to the grid, the best rate is time of use for EV and flat rate for other costs, for other consumption. Our work has many limitations, and one of them is that we take every parameter given in the beginning of the problem, but we know that the prices change every 5 minutes, and the consumption that could not be forecasted very accurately. So it would be a good idea to have a dynamic programming model for this problem to get a more realistic results. The next one is to consider a coalition of the agents who collectively invest in these scenarios, and to investigate what is the optimal way to control the devices. And finally, the last direction is to considering the mass adoption of the price signal. It means that if a huge number of the consumers would respond to the electricity signals and shift their load, for example, from 9 p.m. to 5 p.m., we would have a new peak load that emerged and has the same problem. So a good idea would be to consider more than one consumer with different types of profiles and see what would happen, how to manage this mass adoption by the consumers. Finally, these are the reference I used in this research, and thank you for your time, and I would be more than happy to have your questions.